Olemme shoppailleet itsemme muumikassikipeäksi, ei vaikkaan siinä on lahjuksia, mutta olemme vaihtaneet asua.
Tärkeimpänä on esimerkiksi just, että Venetsia, Brysseli. There are many kinds of different laces. There is like and some of them are the base considered true lace, and some are then considered like peasant or like household lace that made like as an amateur pastime for your household linens. Most of them like of the needlepoint and like then also bobbin lace, most of them are named after the place they were made in rather than the style they were in. Then the other true lace is bobbin lace, or called pillow lace, because it's made on a pillow using multiple threads, opposed to needlepoint lace that uses one thread at a time. Bobbin lace uses multiple threads that are wound on little bobbins. And then there's tape laces that usually combine needlepoint and bobbin lace. That either there's ready-made tape, like bobbin-made tape that you needlepoint and sew together to make patterns, or you make the tape pattern at the same time, like while you're making the lace. That like it's not ready-made, you make it to make the pattern. Lace kipua or huipure, I would say in Finnish. It's a heavy lace, kind of where the motifs are close together and they are linked where they touch, all like bars that are, and you would have like relatively large openings. There would not be any mesh or net. Part lace means that it's made in parts, that you don't make it in a continuous sort of way, and versus a straight lace is made in a continuous motion. And semi-straight is kind of like straight lace, but it needs in between sewing at some points. It like can make loops and loops, and you gotta sew the touching edges together. Quote unquote true lace really began in the 1500s. We don't really know where, but usually like we generally believe it's like Venice or Flanders, somewhere in there. Yeah.
What were these laces used in? Is it like clothing, or is it
at first I would say like at first the decoration in household linens and other things, and especially in like church use decorative elements, but it's until like the late 16th century, 1500s, that we start to see lace in clothing as well. Even though like reticella and punto inario were needlepoint laces, bobbin lace also started at the same time to be used, and it was kind of like at first like a cheap version of needlepoint because it was faster to make. So like the first like bobbin laces were also using the needlepoint designs. And here's more examples of the bobbin lace that are very much in the Renaissance style and using needlepoint designs as their base. Here is I would say this is more like peasant lace, because at some point, even though at some point aristocrats started to realize, oh wait, yeah, we can use lace to display our wealth, and it's a very kind of portable way of showing your wealth. In peasant communities, there were more of these more naive kind of designs. And here's the first quote, one of the I'm showing here's a 1569 I wanted to show this guy because he has Adidas stripes. Adidas. Fun detail in his taste in fashion. In the 1700s, the Baroque style was very much still in the early years was still very much like heavily by going like very like symmetrical floral designs and uses of fancy filling stitches and such, like heavy texture and such. And like this was the era of it was like heavy and like raised was in fashion. Towards the later of the century, we started to get more lighter designs. Now in the 1600s, 1700s, it was bizarre silks in woven fabrics because there was a heavy influence of Far East and Near East influence on the fashion. That like woven silks started to use like Asian design elements. It was like what we call bizarre silks now. So and that like that trend transferred into laces as well, of using like where do I have my notes about it? In the 17th century, it was also like in the later the later we go, the more light we want the latest to be, because there was very much because like embroidered muslins were in fashion as well, so lace then the heavy laces were not so bought. And here's a good point for me in this painting to see like who were making the lace. Well, women, and oftentimes even like in convents by nuns or in established schools by, for example, in France there were government-run schools for making lace. And here we see more of the style. The designs are very much on the border of the lace, starting with the 1700s later, going on, and the flower strips are starting to lift off from the border and even smaller. And yeah, very much the court dresses were used and other such. And here's a very good example that like, we want even lighter lace, even smaller designs and such. Blonde lace example. Blonde lace means silk lace. And here is a very good point to go into the like. You know, they were very much like because even more ostentatious showings of wealth. So at the late 1700s, even though like France was like the epitome of the fashion center of everything, and you know, lace was imported there, and French was like lace was made there, and other things. But you know, French revolution came, so lace industry suffered a lot from this. And then we go to the 1800s, and we start to slowly fashion starts to come around using lace again, especially like Napoleon is trying to revive the industry and everything. 1840s there was a new boom in lace industry. Because like, you know, like ready-made nets were starting, like machine-made nets were starting to, you know, be made, and so that made part laces that made the motifs in parts, so they could use machine-made net and like applique those designs on the machine-made net, and that made like cheaper lace. And yeah, this is why we're very much like at the neoclassical era. Is very heavily seen. Then there's Irish lace examples. Ireland, because of the famine in 1840s, Ireland had some schools established for lace, so that the people could have they first started to first imitated point and bobbin laces before like developing its own like the style of the raised flowers and such. And the Irish crochet was very much like naturalistic in style, and starting to wrap this up, we were late on the schedule and everything. Here's some hate lace blouse, and then there's some American hate lace examples, and examples like that from dark lace. This is an example of a machine lace blouse that uses the top laces that the motifs are made by hand, but the neck round is made by machine. Yeah, we can finish. I have some examples of machine-made laces, the machines, but we are so short on time, so you can grab me from my sleeve and I can explain them more from later if you catch me around. Of modern lace art. And for my last examples that lace is an old form of art that is still being made, but more in the for the sake of doing it rather than for the making money or for making it for the nobles. Thank you very much.
Japanese publishers also recognize this newly formed democratic and so the shoujo magazines were born. And here we can actually see one cover from the early magazines from 1908. As you can see, those are pretty young girls at that point. That's important later on. And the first magazines were Shoujo Kai, meaning Girls' Shelter in 1903, and Shoujo Sekai before here, Girls' Ball in 1906. Magazines played an important part in the development of the shoujo culture, which later inspired shoujo manga and kawaii culture in general. The schools and magazines funded to develop girls that embodied purity, elegance, innocence, and chastity. For this purpose, the asexual shoujo was needed. Shoujo was someone who still existed outside of heterosexuality. And the shoujo magazines wanted to divert the putting sexual interest towards teenage boys to homosocial relationships between high school girls. These are usually called S-sekai or as S-relationships. And here's a picture of a girls' school student dressed in modern outfit. It's called Haikara. She has the hakama pants and then a kimono top. The S relationships were spiritual romance between two high school girl students, and they often included roles. The older girl was an admirable big sister, which the older little sister looked up to. These kinds of relationships were meant to stay in the school and to be left behind after graduation. So it doesn't mean that the magazines were trying to tell you to be lesbians, but to have a very deep relationship with girls, like girls being pals and such, and to leave it behind. And another example of media aimed to asexual shoujo is Takara Sukarebu, an all-female theater troupe, and we will actually have a lecture about it today at 16 o'clock. So kind of ironically, the men in the publishing industry created shoujo magazines to educate young women with conservative values, but they also, in the same time, created a space of self-expression for young women. And the school girls started to publish their own poems, stories and letters in the magazines. They developed their own secret language, which emulated the style in which the short stories about S relationships were written. This also transformed the Japanese language in ways that can still be seen nowadays in a curly speech style. The language was very overly formal, flowery, and cute. The shoujo magazine readers formed their own communities, which worked as a counterculture against strict and formal culture of the girls' high schools, an outside world in which the marriage and motherhood awaited. But the most influential shoujo magazines were Shoujo no Tomo, which started its publication in 1908, Shoujo Kaho, published from 1918, and Shoujo Book, its publication began in 1923. But the Shoujo no Tomo was the favorite of girls themselves, as it contained quality stories written for girls and had great illustrations. The golden age of shoujo magazines was in the 1920s and 1930s, when the most famous illustrators wrote for the magazines. Takehisa Yumei, Takabatake Kazuo, and Nakahara Yunichi. The stories published in these magazines are pretty much forgotten, but the illustrations sometimes pop up in the social media, and one can sometimes see them in museums in Japan. Takehisa Yumei is considered to be a first major shoujo illustrator. Here you can see his typical style, very like pillowy, tiny curls. He was a self-learned artist and came outside of established art circles, having learned his craft by working for a crossmaker in his youth. He was also a writer, poet, and a bookbinder, so a man of many talents. He created his style as a visual counterpart for lyrical novels. He especially illustrated Hiyoshi and Nobuko stories. Nobuko was serialized in various shoujo magazines and was one of Japan's most successful commercial novelists. And Takehisa actually established his own shop in 1914, where he sold postcards, illustrations, and stationery in his dreamy style. It's kind of a predecessor for kawaii shops in a way. And these items were affordable to young women who read the shoujo magazines. So, Takehisa Kazuo came after Takehisa, and he was influenced by his style and continued developing the shoujo aesthetic during the 1920s. He was an educated painter who had studied both Japanese and Western art styles in different academies. This meant that Takabatake was largely influenced by prominent art styles of the time, like Art Nouveau. He had started working for Shoujo Kaho as an illustrator in 1913, but also worked for other shoujo magazines. His boy characters were said to have a girl inside of them, and girl characters to have a boy inside of them, so this androgyny was his trademark. And this might not be obvious to us today, but in the 1920s and 1930s, this kind of active girl with a bob cut and Western clothes was considered kind of boys, so that's fine. It was thought that his characters were kind of asexual. Nakahara Yunichi is the last one on this lecture, and he's considered the mother of shoujo eyes, but let's go at the beginning before. He also studied art in official art academies and started working for Shoujo no Tomo in 1932, which meant that he was of an entirely different generation than Yumei Takehisa, who I mentioned first. However, his style combined both Japanese lyrical nostalgia and Western delicateness popularized by Takehisa. In his art, we can most clearly see why modern shoujo looks like it does now. The girls in the illustrations had small frames, tiny dot noses, and small but red mouths, and huge sparkling eyes. Nakahara is said to have influenced Ryoko Ikera's The Rose of Versailles manga style. Maybe most interesting to us today is that when he was an illustrator for those shoujo magazines, he wrote fashion columns to them. The story tells that he started producing a fashion column for Shoujo no Tomo because he was frustrated that the girls dressed so badly, and he wanted to help them to have a bit better fashion taste for Western clothing. The Japanese style was still worn regularly, so mothers, parents, or school could not teach girls how to dress in these new kind of clothes. So Nakahara wanted to be the kind of teacher for them. I will show you illustrations from the girls' magazines, and then I will coordinate clothing and items from Lolita brands while I draw inspiration from those pictures. And this is just a bit of fun after the academic bit, and I don't know if I would wear these outfits themselves, but I think it's just nice to imagine how we could draw inspiration from historical pictures. This illustration is from a story which of course depicts the romantic relationship between two girls. So his pair is returning to home and they are having a big moment here. mix of West and East. And this is the show that you can see that the two girls look pretty similar. There's not much different regarding the faces, and that's done in purpose because they want to show that Japanese schoolgirl can be both Western and Eastern. So this is actually the same girl, just differently. But I think the girl on the left is wearing colors that could go very well either with classic or Swedish classic, as they are bright green or rose red. But I personally associate these colors more with classic than Steve Lolita. And she's also wearing cloche hat, which is typically associated with the 1920s. It has a straight border that goes close to the base, and it doesn't have an actual brim. This hat style goes well with the bob hood, that is also associated with the 20s. And cloches were decorated in the 1920s in pretty similar way as we do in Lolita style nowadays, because women attach ribbons, laces, beads, brooches, and wet hairs to hats. So I think it's very easy to do that in Lolita. Of course, the ghost dress doesn't have the typical silhouette we call Lolita dress, with some kind of sack or baby doll dress would nevertheless work with it. And white tights she's wearing are actually trademark for Lolita, I think, so it's not that far away. And shoes are pretty typical Mary Jane's. But the other side I think is pretty difficult because it's not wearing kind of fun aesthetic influences, but she has both Western and more Eastern things on her outfit. And it has dark colors, but not gothic shades. And this outfit can also be approached from classic Lolita perspective, I think. And it refers to a Japanese high-garb uniform that includes long hakama pants and haori or kimono top. In any case, it has separate top and bottom. And black translucent ties aren't very typical of Lolita, so I think we should change that. But the shoes are fine as they are T-strapped, very classical kind of shoes. So this is the worst outfit I made. I decided to use Innocent Wars Ribbon crochet hat. It's brown color and lace decorated bows. We guide the outfit more in the classical direction, and the pink felt hat could have also been possibility. I didn't find one I liked from the Lolita brands, but it's easy to find as vintage or maybe from a regular Western brands if you want to use that. And the dress is Leaves Spring Green Summer Lady, that can be either tightened from the waist as in the picture, or left loose when it's more like a sack dress, like in the inspiration picture. I think the delicate lace service of the dress brings it together with the hat, which has lots of lace on it. But I decided to follow the bright colors from the original picture because they are very bright and easy to notice. So I chose the scalloped ribbon coat by Emily Temple Cute. I could have used cardigan also, but because the girls are returning from home, I thought it would be more logical to have them wear both. The jacket has a collar that can also be worn in the picture. It's more pointed one in that picture, but it's not very Lolita, so I changed it to a more Peter Pan one. And its bows coincides with the references of the hats. Yeah, for the Haikara outfit, I wanted to keep a separate top and bottom, as well as the Japanese styles influences. Metamorphose has a lot of collections which are inspired by kimonos and other traditional clothing. So as such, it would have been easy to find GSK or OP. But I thought that was kind of boring, so I wanted to try going for a different route. So I chose the Profusion of Flowers in Nostalgia Haori jacket from Metamorphose, and the Hakama style tucked long skirt, which was recommended by the brand to be used with the Haori jacket. And they came in many different colors, and these trousers are a bit more brighter and maybe a bit greenish color than in the picture where they're very like navy blue, but I thought that the contrast between the top and bottom is most important, and in here I have preserved it pretty well. Yeah. And the general impression is still elegant and stylish, especially with high collar shirt. It's also from Meta. And I chose the enamel T-strappy shoes from Alice and the Pirates because of the red color goes well with the Haori jacket. And the gold buckles create continuity with like the gold details of the hakama pants and the shirt. Yeah, I also think the wooden soles are kind of old-fashioned and remind me of Keta shoes. This magazine volume, this picture is from had a story which was illustrated with series of historically interested women, and I chose this Rococo one because I thought it was interesting to see that they were also intrigued by that era and its upper class over the top fashion. And the dress itself has not been colored, but it has those like really vivid green parts on it, but it doesn't bring to my mind to Rococo, but instead to Victorian like arsenic red green. So I don't think it would be a good outfit with that. So I wanted to change it to a more kind of bluish green or something else. And her dress is of course long because it's a Rococo one, which also is possibly Lolita as we know. But it would be more interesting to use a slightly shorter Hime style dress or something like that. And those are pretty easy to find. They are in almost every brand, especially from Chinese ones. But I would like to use on one that has the same kind of open section at the front, because this is kind of a robe à la Française style of dress, which had the separate underskirt under it. Yeah. The print of the dress is more Japanese than French because it's very asymmetrical and it has these kind of frills instead of flowers. But I think more Western one could also work. The hat would be a straw hat or even a tricorn, as long as it's big and full of adornments. The Rococo hats were historically very heavily decorated, so this outfit should be very over the top, I think. So I came up with this one. There were many options, but I chose this one because it had everything I wanted. It didn't have the princess sleeves, the greenish color, that's not the arsenic red, and tiered skirt, and the opening at the front section, and this has everything. It's from Miss Point, called Lily Garden, and it also has a post and a printed fabric, both elements to be located in the original picture, as you can see. The head accessory needed to be big and have even bigger feather on it, so I want this bonnet. It's from Triple Fortune and called Doll Bonnet, and it has all of these, and it also has roses and bows on it tied together with the OP. And the small flower bundle on the left corner of the bonnet is an homage to the original picture with its bright spring green color, but it felt a bit lonely alone, so added flower corsets to the mix. It's on the bob here on the right side. The original dress has a large rose pinned on the breast, so I used Victorian Maiden's Grande Rose lace corsets to create a similar look to that. The dress, at least in the picture of light, is very muted mint green. It needed to be paired with quite neutral tights, because more bright mint green would not fit. It would like strike very harshly. And this is why I chose to use Victorian Maiden's grey Victorian Rose lace tights. The shoes are actually done in the style of the 17th century mules, backless slippers. So I think they go very well with this, even though we cannot see her shoes at all. But the color is quite neutral and has ribbons that also work well with the outfit. So let's go to the last one. In these illustrations, their dress has very typical 1930s silhouette and feel to it, so it's not very Lolita in itself, but I think the top part with split sleeves and Peter Pan color is very good. And Peter Pan colors actually were very trendy in 1930s, especially in wedding dresses and children's clothing. And this particular tone of red with ruffles and the color remind me of old school dresses, but also country Lolita. It's pretty strong color, so it would be difficult to mix it with other colors than white, so I think we will keep white, bright white and red. The girl has already matched the accessories, as she has both ribbons in her hair and in her dress on the waist, so that's good. So the third one is polka dot girl. As the previous skirt had a one-piece dress as main piece, I decided to have a skirt and blouse combo for this one. The French polka dot ribbon chapa blouse by Angelic Pretty has the trendy and cute Peter Pan color on it, but it also has the red and white to like it together with other elements in this. And I decided to pair the color style with polka dots, which were also very popular from 1930s to 1950s. The skirt is really old school scallop skirt from 206 by Meta. The scalloped edge reminds me of cookies, which bring to my mind Coffee Lolita, which I wanted to have a little bit in here. And the headwear is one big head bow with same colors as in the blouse and in the skirt. Its lace details remind me of the ruffles in the original dress in here. And the over-the-knee socks with red color, polka dots and small ribbons tie the outfit together. And I really like the strawberries, bring a quite cute and country vibe to it, so I wanted to have them instead of just white ones. And I chose the shoes because the color matched with the rest of the outfit, and they also have ribbons, which is a recurring detail for this outfit. And they are classic ribbon shoes from 2008 by Angelic Pretty.
Today we are gonna talk a little bit about Japanese Mushigamian. So a bit of history first. It all started in the city of Takarazuka when very industrialists Kobayashi wanted to do the city's business and attract public to travel there. He wrote that the musical theater where all the performers were female would make a good family-friendly attraction. It's a bit like Kabuki theater came to life because all the performers in original Kabuki were female in the early 17th century. Kobayashi then trained a group of girls to sing and dance, and they gave their first performance in 1940 in Paradise Theater, which is a former hot spring school. A couple of years later, a musical theatre school was established. Nowadays it is known as Takarazuka Music School. Takarazuka review performance was also super popular and it gained a good worldwide attention. 1920s was an important time in the decade and onwards they also started to travel around the world to perform. Their popularity continued to grow and now they are performing all year around, both in Takarazuka and Tokyo theaters. The picture is from the original play Angel of Lake Yoko, and the year is 1920. Modesty, fairness and grace, that is the motto of the group. So students who aspire to become Takarazuka must study 2 years in Takarazuka Music School. In there they profile who either perform male roles or female roles. They learn kata, which include gestures, movements, intonations, and speech patterns that signify gender. The founder of Kobayashi called all Takarazuka Musume, daughters. The purpose was to teach all Takarazuka to become good wives and wise mothers for society, which was the institution ideal of the woman at the time. So one must ask, how did perform male roles prepare for being a good wife and wise mother? Kobayashi explained that otokoyaku, male role performers, they cherish real men and real masculinity, and the Mushimeyaku help the masculine traits stand out more by emphasizing their own femininity. Kobayashi claimed that otokoyaku are more real than real men. This has been interpreted to mean that those real men. He thought about them, how to try to be alluring because they kind of rule the world anyway. And these otakoyaku are free fantasies for women, so they could better learn to respect masculinity. Well, this all worked out like it was supposed to. The picture is from Phantom of the Opera. Okay, so now we have to talk about fans. Takasuka fans have always been mostly female, and there is a review representing something new, a different kind of gender identity, which was not a good wife and wise mother. The fans have told that they admire otakoyaku because they can express gender roles without being changed by them. Musumayaku because they were free to engage in lesbian love. The review management, which has always been strictly patriarchal, intended to make main role performers genderless and asexual, but the fans saw them more androgynous in a way that they are capable of embracing traits that are traditionally considered either masculine or feminine, all at once. The fans loved the performance, and otakoyaku received a lot of love letters from female fans, and that was the first big scandal the review ever faced. There is also a type of fan which has been called impersonator. It means that some fans started in their daily life to dress, talk, and behave in a way that was considered very masculine. They were influenced by the way otakoyaku performed on stage and also outside of stage, because some otakoyaku refused to drop their so-called stage persona. There was another big scandal when Musumayaku and otakoyaku first came out as a couple, which was something the fans loved. And additionally, later in the 1960s, fans established closed clubs called Lisää clubs, where staff were usually otakoyaku, either from Takasuka or from some other theater group inspired by Takasuka. And according to interviews from 1980s and 1990s, many of these candy club workers have said that they live their daily lives as a gay. I hope you went and listened to the Shoujo Magazine lecture earlier today. Okay, so the review's first official name was Takasuka Shoujo Daily Lisää. And in the early 1900s, Shoujo basically meant a specific age between like puberty and marriage. And at that time, Shoujo also became named a social practice and genre of fiction called esu or eskankei. So Yoshi and Akuko's eskankei works were actually so popular that Takasuka review founder Kobayashi took those scripts, changed the genders to match the heterosexual identity ideas, and turned them into play scripts. Well, it's kind of hilarious if you think that because the male lovers in these new stories are depicted as very pretty and so overly masculine, and all the ladies are in love with them. And when these characters are performed by otakoyaku on stage, it is so dishonor and it's also delightfully gay. So the review they faced a lot of censorship and scandals in its first decades. There were the love letters, a lot of spicy signs, and romantic and sexual relationships between Takasuka and otakoyaku especially were heavily criticized It was said that SKMK was thriving among the review. The management explained that all this was just part of girls' fleeting shoujo period and tried to make sure that SKMK was rooted out. For example, they made the performers wear military uniforms, and you can guess that the fans found that even more spicy. Around that time, the company tried to get away with the lesbian image and started a male group. A direct link between manga and Takarazuka is the author Tezuka Osamu. He was born and raised in Takarazuka City and saw the review perform many times. Tezuka has said that the plays made such an impression on him that they heavily influenced his works. The picture on the left is from Princess Line, which is considered the first manga targeted at female audience. It has been argued that Tezuka's influence is strong in Takahashi Makoto's works, especially Tezuka's earlier imaginations of Takarazuka. So next, first female mangakas started their careers in 1960s under the new wave feminism. In 1970s, most shoujo magazine mangakas were already female, and there is a lot of Tezuka's influence in their works. At this time, shoujo manga started to rebel against traditional gender roles, and you can see many Takarazuka-inspired characters in them. Like think about Diego Ikeda and Rose of Versailles. On the left there is Diego Ikeda's character design reference, and on the right there is the Takarazuka performer. And how is Lady Oscar not otakoyaku? Like very masculine female, makes all the ladies going after them. Rose of Versailles is also one of the signature performances of Takarazuka, and it has been super popular since they first did it in 1974. And back to the theater we go. It has been said that Takarazuka has brought forth the extremes of feminine and masculine impressions in a way that was very untypical in its time. It is notable that the original idea of the group was very patriarchal, with these daughters will be taught to become perfect wives and such. But then things kind of evolved and went wild, and the performers and their fans didn't give a crap and found freedom to express themselves like they wanted. Takarazuka and their fans have challenged expectations about both gender expression and self-expression. They have also influenced a lot of popular cultural works like manga and anime. The review has been said to be a role model for positive feminism and gender equality. Can we see something of Takarazuka in here today in our community? Well, let's talk a bit about shoujo again, because it was shoujo was at first something that was very innocent and cute, and then it became really rebellious, just like all the Takarazuka animes. In 1918s, shoujo evolved into something else. It became this direct blog, share your identity of popular culture which defies the traditional roles and embraces symbolic femininity and masculinity. and cultural identity is very closely tied to the development of Japanese street styles in the 1980s and 1990s. So I think that our community is very clear and gay and fabulous, and that wouldn't be possible without all the people that came for us and thought that we can do things differently. And we can say that Music Together has kept alive many aesthetics our community loves today. And we can also say that certain performers on stage have also influenced certain fan culture, which later became EGL. I think we all have some rebellion and Tampere in us, and we are more than the sum of our parts, and we can also be an example and influence someone's life in a good way. I thank you for listening. I hope this lecture was not too heavy. Thank you very much.